Poverty isn't fate, it's a mindset. Florence Scovel Shinn taught a truth few dare to embrace. But today, you're about to learn how to ditch those tired old scarcity patterns holding you back for good, and unlock the abundance that's already waiting for you. Because real wealth, it doesn't start in your wallet, it starts in your mind. Stick around until the end and see for yourself. Chapter 1: The Invisible Weight. Why poverty sticks when you don't reject it. Picture someone trudging along with a heavy backpack. Inside, no gold, just rocks. Each rock is an old belief: money is dirty, wealth is for the elite, better to be poor and honest than rich and corrupt. The problem? They don't realize they could just drop the bag. That's how so many live, carrying poverty like it's who they are, not a burden they can ditch. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "Nothing is lost in the universe. What you accept stays, what you reject leaves." Poverty isn't just a lack of cash, it's quietly accepting limits that don't belong to you. Until you consciously reject that mental and material misery, it clings to you like a shadow. Look at the Bible's Gideon. He was threshing wheat in a winepress, hiding, steeped in fear and lack. Yet the Lord's angel called him a mighty warrior. His reality screamed poverty and oppression, but God saw a different destiny. Gideon had to reject the image of a coward to step into the role of a leader. His land's prosperity began the moment he stopped seeing himself as small. But today, many do the opposite. They pray for abundance while tossing around phrases like, "Times are tough, I'm always broke, I can't get ahead." Those words are like nails, pinning poverty to the floor of your life. Florence taught that poverty takes root in unconscious acceptance. You believe it's normal to live small, so you stay small. It's harsh but true. Until you say a firm no to poverty, it'll keep sitting at your table, eating your bread, stealing your time, and draining your joy. Wealth can't grow in occupied territory. You've got to evict that invisible squatter you've tolerated for too long. Think of Israel leaving Egypt. Their slavery wasn't just physical, it was mental. God led them out of the land of misery, but they still carried the invisible weight of a slave mindset. They grumbled, longed for Egypt's onions, and wanted to turn back. True freedom only came when a new generation rejected the past and chose to step into Canaan. The lesson: wealth only shows up when you refuse to stay chained to yesterday. Here's today's invitation. Look inside and spot the rocks in your backpack. What words, fears, or memories are still propping up your poverty? Florence reminds us, your word is your magic wand. If your mouth confirms lack, lack stays. If your mouth rejects misery and claims abundance, life has to catch up. So, what if, starting now, you refuse to let words of scarcity pass your lips? What if, every time lack creeps in, you kick it out like an unwelcome guest? This isn't just psychology, it's spiritual. Poverty can't survive in a heart that refuses to host it. If this reflection has already opened your eyes, hit that subscribe button to keep getting truths that can transform your financial and spiritual life. Drop a comment too. Which rock are you ready to toss out today? Florence Scovel Shinn and the Bible agree, rejecting poverty is the first step. Only those who let go of the invisible weight make room to carry the visible gold. Chapter 2: Florence and the Mental Cleanse. Clearing beliefs before accumulating wealth. Imagine trying to fill a dirty glass with clean water. No matter how pure the source, the taste will always be tainted. That's what happens with many people's financial lives. They pray for prosperity, but their inner glass is clogged with warped beliefs. Florence Scovel Shinn warned, your mind is a magnet. If it's full of junk, it attracts junk. If it's clean, it pulls in abundance. Before you can stack up wealth, you've got to do a mental deep clean. This isn't about chanting positive phrases like a robot, it's about yanking out the roots of thoughts we've often inherited without questioning. How many times have you heard, or even said, things like, money doesn't buy happiness, the rich don't get into heaven, or better a little with peace than a lot with trouble? These ideas sound spiritual, but they're really just dust clouding your view of true abundance. The Bible gives us a powerful example in Nehemiah. He returned to Jerusalem and found the walls crumbled and the gates burned. Before rebuilding the city, he had to clear the rubble. Only with a clean slate could he build something solid. It's a perfect metaphor for our inner lives. Nobody builds prosperity on the ruins of fear and limiting beliefs. You've got to clear the debris first. Florence stressed that prosperity starts with disciplined thinking. Your mind is like a house. You decide who gets to come in and who gets kicked out. If you let worries, envy, or defeatist phrases crash on your couch, those unwanted guests will drain your energy. But if you only open the door to thoughts of abundance, faith, and gratitude, the whole vibe changes, and your outer reality follows. It's wild how many people hustle hard but don't see that their biggest enemies aren't out there, they're inside. Take Joseph, wrongfully locked up in Egypt. He kept his mind free of bitterness, and because of that, he thrived even in a prison cell, eventually rising to overseer. The difference wasn't his circumstances, it was his inner hygiene. So, let's think, what's your mental deep clean today? Maybe it's ditching the money phrases your parents drilled into you. Maybe it's stopping the "everything's so hard" mantra. Or maybe it's choosing not to soak up news that just feeds fear. Every small tweak is like cracking open a window in a stuffy room to let fresh air flood in. Florence reminds us, don't accept negative ideas. They're silent thieves stealing your divine inheritance. If you want to build wealth, you first need to stack up the right thoughts. That's the real cleanup, tossing out the invisible junk and replacing it with words of faith, visions of abundance, and trust in God's power. Here's the deal. Prosperity doesn't thrive on dirty ground. Just like a farmer preps the soil before planting, you've got to prep your mind before you can reap. That's the secret that separates those who get rich from those who just dream about it. If you're already seeing the value of this inner cleanup, hit that subscribe button to keep getting content that strengthens your mind and spirit. And drop a comment. Which thought are you sweeping out of your life starting today? Mental decluttering isn't a luxury, it's a must. When you clear out the inside, you make room for abundance to settle in. As Florence put it, wealth flows from a clean mind, never from a cluttered heart. Chapter 3, Gideon in the Winepress. Prosperity arises where there was only fear. Gideon was hiding. An ordinary guy, no army, no title, no confidence. He was threshing wheat in a winepress, a place meant for crushing grapes, not prepping food. He was there because he feared the Midianites, who kept raiding Israel. It was the perfect picture of scarcity, a cornered people, working in secret, with no hope for the future. Yet right there, in that scene of fear, the angel of the Lord showed up and declared, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." This Bible story unveils a powerful secret. Prosperity doesn't start in fertile lands or full bank accounts. It begins in a mind that chooses to believe, even when everything around screams the opposite. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "The word you accept as truth about yourself is the seed that will bloom into your destiny." Gideon saw himself as the least of his family, unworthy of big wins, but God saw a liberator. How often do you hide in your own winepress? Maybe it's debt, a job that doesn't match your worth, or fears that convince you wealth is for others, never you. But it's in that shaky, insecure place that the seed of prosperity can sprout, if you embrace a new identity. Florence insisted you've got to swap the label of scarcity for one of abundance. She said, fear is just faith turned upside down. When you trade fear for trust, you shift the flow of your life. That's what Gideon did. He questioned, he wavered, but he chose to believe. His victory didn't come from a big army but from obedience and faith that replaced doubt. Here's the kicker. The winepress was a hideout, but it became the starting line for a leader. Gideon's prosperity didn't kick in when he had resources. It started when he chose to hear God's voice over the noise of fear. That's the move Florence urges us to make. Trade thoughts of, I can't, I won't, and it's not for me, for a bold declaration that abundance is already your birthright. Ever notice how your mind conjures its own Midianite enemies? They pop up in phrases like, it'll fail, it's too risky, you weren't born for this. Those thoughts paralyze you, keep you hiding. But when you shift your inner language, those enemies lose their grip. That's what happened with Gideon. A frail man became a victorious general because he believed in a word bigger than his fears. Here's the takeaway. Don't wait for your circumstances to change to start thriving. Gideon prospered in the winepress, Joseph thrived in prison, Isaac flourished in a drought. Prosperity begins with the choice to bloom where you're planted, even when it feels impossible. If this message hits home, subscribe to the channel to keep getting content that fuels your faith and sharpens your mind. And drop a comment. What's the winepress in your life right now, and what new identity are you stepping into to turn fear into prosperity? Florence would sum it up like this: it's not the place or the circumstances, but your consciousness that defines your wealth. Change your consciousness, and even the most hidden winepress becomes fertile ground for your abundance. Chapter 4: Words like brooms, driving out misery with declarations of abundance. Picture an abandoned house. Over time, dust and cobwebs take over until the place is barely recognizable. Your mind works the same way. Left unguarded, it collects thoughts of fear, lack, and misery. Florence Scovel Shinn used to say that words have the power to sweep away this invisible junk. Your word is your magic wand. Use it to clear out what doesn't serve you and make room for what you desire. Words are like spiritual brooms. Every time you say, "I don't have money," you're piling on the mental grime of scarcity. But when you declare, "I am prosperous, the universe is working in my favor," you sweep away the dust of misery and open the door to new possibilities. Florence taught that consciously repeating these phrases creates a vibrational field, and life responds to that frequency. The Bible shows this clearly. In Ezekiel 37, God leads the prophet to a valley full of dry bones, a scene of death and impossibility. But God didn't tell Ezekiel to weep or complain. He told him to prophesy. By speaking life, the bones came together, grew flesh, and rose as an army. The miracle didn't start in the visible world. It started with the words spoken. The same goes for prosperity. It's born in your mouth before it shows up in your wallet. How often have you fed poverty with your own words? Saying things like, "This will never work," "I wasn't born to be rich," or "Everything's so hard for me," is like swinging the door wide open and inviting misery to move in. Florence put it bluntly: poverty doesn't sustain itself. It's propped up by the limiting words you keep repeating. Here's the secret. Your tongue can be a weapon of destruction or the broom that cleans up your spiritual environment. Take Jabez, a lesser-known Bible figure. He prayed a simple but bold prayer. "Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory." 1 Chronicles 4 verse 10. He refused to accept the label of pain his name carried. With words of faith, he swept away the curse that seemed to define him and paved the way for abundance. Here's your invitation today. Start using your words as tools for cleaning. Every time fear creeps in, counter it with declarations of abundance, and you'll be kicking misery out of your mind and your future. It might seem small, but it's like sweeping a bit of dust every day. Little by little, the whole space transforms. Florence said, "Never give voice to what you don't want to see grow." That's a golden rule. If you don't want poverty, stop feeding it with your words. If you want prosperity, proclaim it out loud, every day, until your inner world is clean and ready to receive it. And here's the call to action. If this teaching resonates with you, subscribe to the channel now. You'll keep getting reflections to help clear your mind and make space for abundance. In the comments, share, what declaration of wealth are you going to start repeating today? Because it's simple in the end. Your outer world always reflects the words you release in your inner world. If you want a prosperous future, start with a verbal cleanup. Every positive phrase is a sweep of the broom, clearing misery from your path. Chapter 5: Work that imprisons, when effort without vision only creates more scarcity. Ever met someone who works from dawn to dusk, never stopping, but never getting anywhere? It's like the harder they try, the further they are from prosperity. Florence Scovel Shinn warned about this trap. Effort without spiritual direction is like running in circles. You get exhausted but go nowhere. Many mistake prosperity for sweat. They think grinding harder will unlock abundance. But the truth is, effort without vision traps you. It's like rowing against the current. You burn energy but don't reach your destination. Life demands more than just activity. It calls for alignment with the invisible. The Bible shows this clearly with Martha and Mary, Lazarus' sisters. Martha was busy with endless tasks, trying to please everyone, while Mary sat at Jesus' feet, soaking in wisdom. Martha worked non-stop but was anxious, irritated, and overwhelmed. Mary, with less physical effort, gained a bigger vision. Jesus said, "Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her." Luke 10 verse 42. Martha's work was needed, but without vision, it only bred exhaustion. Florence explained that abundant life starts with a clear idea in your spirit. You don't work for bread, you work for vision. When the vision is clear, the bread always follows. Vision multiplies your work, turning sweat into harvest. Without it, effort just recycles misery. Think of Israel in Egypt. The Hebrews slaved away, making bricks for Pharaoh. Effort. They had plenty. Prosperity. None. Their work wasn't blessed because it lacked divine purpose, just exploitation. Only when Moses brought a vision of freedom did their labor start pointing toward a land flowing with milk and honey. How often are you living like a modern slave? Overtime, sacrificed weekends, chasing bills, but never tasting abundance? That's because the mindset shift Florence preached hasn't happened yet. She said, it's not the amount of effort that brings prosperity, but the quality of faith guiding your actions. The key isn't working less, it's working with guidance. Work without vision is a burden. Work with vision is a seed. Plant with purpose, and the fruit multiplies. Plant without awareness, and you just waste energy and time. Here's the invitation. Stop and reflect. Are you just busy, or are you actually moving toward prosperity? If this hits home, subscribe to the channel now. You'll get weekly content to align your mind and effort so every drop of sweat yields real results. In the comments, share. What area of your life feels like all effort but no vision? That answer could be your first step to opening your eyes and turning your work into a source of abundance. Florence nailed it. Work that enslaves comes from fear. Work that frees comes from faith. The Bible backs it up. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Psalm 127 verse 1. It's not effort alone that creates wealth, it's alignment with the right vision. Because in the end, abundance isn't the result of endless hours of sweat, it's the balance of action and inspiration. The invisible multiplies the visible. Chapter 6, Ruth in the Unexpected Harvest. Abundance appears when you decide to act in faith. Ruth was an outsider, a widow, penniless, without inheritance, living among a people not her own. From a human perspective, everything pointed to poverty and rejection. Yet, in that unlikely setting, she reaped abundance. Her secret? She chose to act with faith. When she followed her mother-in-law Naomi to Bethlehem, Ruth had no clear promise of provision. She simply said, "Your people will be my people, and your God my God," Ruth 1 verse 16. It was a bold step into uncertainty, and that step opened doors that changed her destiny. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "Abundance doesn't show up where there's fear, but where there's a daring attitude of faith." That's exactly what we see in Ruth. She didn't sit still, waiting for something to happen. She went to the fields, gleaning leftover grain. Where others saw scarcity, she saw opportunity. And in that simple act, her life was repositioned for prosperity. The scene is striking. A poor young woman, picking up scraps in a field, unaware she was catching the eye of the land's owner, Boaz. What looked like mere survival was actually the start of an unexpected harvest. Because when faith and action meet, the invisible moves in our favor. Florence drove this home. It's not enough to believe. You have to take steps that prove your belief. Faith without action is like a seed locked in a drawer. It'll never bear fruit. Ruth had no guarantees, but she had a conviction that pushed her to move. How often do we find ourselves like her? Surrounded by uncertainty, with no visible signs of prosperity, yet faced with a choice: freeze in fear or step out in faith. The difference lies in choosing to move, even without seeing the outcome. Here's a key lesson: abundance doesn't come when everything's lined up. It shows up in the middle of the field, in the sweat of the search, in the refusal to quit. That's how it was for Ruth, and for countless men and women of faith. The harvest starts small but points to something far greater. Deep down, Ruth didn't just gather grain. She gathered favor, honor, and a new story. She became Boaz's wife, entered David's lineage, and ultimately, the genealogy of Jesus. What began as an act of survival turned into an eternal legacy. So, where have you let your faith sit idle? What fields are you avoiding out of fear you'll find nothing? Your unexpected harvest might be hiding exactly where you least expect it. but it'll only appear when you choose to act. Florence put it this way: opportunity dresses up as work, so many miss it. Ruth's field seemed insignificant, but it held the future God had prepared for her. Before you move on, subscribe to the channel. Just like Ruth didn't let her chance to act slip by, don't miss out on content that can open your eyes to prosperity. In the comments, share. What area of your life needs you to step out in faith, even without guarantees? This simple exercise could be the nudge you need for your own unexpected harvest. Ruth's story proves that abundance isn't about external circumstances, it's about internal resolve. It's faith turned into action that catches God's attention. Because, in the end, prosperity is never an accident. It's a response. A response to the bold step of someone who doesn't just wait, but acts. Chapter 7, Florence and the Substitution Code, Replacing Poor Thoughts with Images of Wealth. One of the most powerful secrets Florence Scovel Shinn taught was what she called the law of substitution. She said, "It's no use fighting thoughts of poverty. They must be replaced with images of wealth and confidence." The mind doesn't accept a void, it responds to what you put in its place. This makes you think, how often do you try to chase away scarcity thoughts, only for them to crash back like waves? The problem isn't just rejecting them, it's replacing them. The mind naturally fills space, and if you don't feed it with visions of abundance, fear will reclaim the territory. We see a vivid example in the Bible with Joshua. When God called him to lead Israel after Moses' death, the challenge seemed overwhelming. He could have felt inadequate. But God told him, "Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful." Joshua 1 verse 8. Notice, the command wasn't just, "Don't be afraid," but replace fear with meditation and confession of the word. In other words, put something new in place of what threatens to paralyze you. Joshua prospered because he filled his mind with promises, not doubts. Florence said it in her own way: if your imagination is busy with visions of defeat, your life will follow that script. But if you fill the screen of your mind with victory, you'll inevitably walk toward it. Imagine a man who, every time he checks his wallet, thinks, "I never have enough." That phrase paints a picture that sticks in his subconscious. Even if he works hard, his mind stays wired for scarcity. But if he starts saying, "My provision comes from unlimited sources," his imagination fills with possibilities. And life begins to respond. That's the code of substitution. Swap a limiting thought for an expansive one. And it's not just about tossing out words, you need emotion, conviction, and repetition. Ruth, who we looked at earlier, did this too. She could have stayed trapped in the mindset of a poor widow in a foreign land. Instead, she chose to believe in a God who would provide. Her faith gave her a new vision of the future, and she reaped abundantly. Now think, what images do you hold daily? Scenes of lack or abundance? Words of discouragement or confidence? Your future is shaped by these invisible choices. Florence encouraged her students to create vivid affirmations, like mental snapshots. She said, "Your imagination is God's workshop. What you see inside will inevitably be drawn to you outside." If your mind keeps slipping back to scarcity today, don't fight it. Just replace it. Craft new images. Speak new words. Remember the Bible's advice, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, Romans 12 verse 2. Before moving on, take a quick pause. If this content is helping clear your thoughts, subscribe to the channel now. You'll keep replacing old ideas with new truths every week. In the comments, write, "I choose to replace poverty with abundance." That simple yet powerful phrase could kickstart your mental reprogramming. The law of substitution never fails. What you repeat and visualize with faith becomes your reality. Chapter 8, The Voices of Delay, Thoughts and People That Suck Your Fortune. Often, the greatest prison isn't a lack of money but the voices echoing inside and around us. Florence Scovel Shinn called these forces of resistance, ideas and people that act like invisible thieves of prosperity. She said, "Nothing delays your destiny more than agreeing with the voice of doubt." Stop and think, how many times have you abandoned a project because someone said, "That won't make money," or your own mind whispered, "You're not capable"? Those voices don't just slow you down, they drain your life force, paralyze your initiatives, and turn dreams to dust before they even take shape. The Bible shows this clearly when Israel reached the Promised Land. 12 spies were sent to scout Canaan. 10 came back saying, "We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are." Numbers 13:31. Only Joshua and Caleb brought a vision of faith. The result: an entire generation wandered in the desert for 40 years because most chose to listen to the voices of delay. Florence put it sharply, the words of others only have power over you when they echo your own disbelief. Criticism and pessimism only take root when you make space for them inside. Here's the nuance. It's not just your thoughts but also your company. People stuck in a scarcity mindset can't stand to see someone thrive. So, they sap your energy with comments, sarcasm, and doubts. It's like carrying anchors while trying to sprint. A practical example. Imagine someone deciding to start a small business. They're fired up, but when they share their plan, they hear, "That'll never work. The market's too crowded." If they buy into that voice, they're defeated before they start. But if they replace that influence with a faith-filled declaration, like Florence taught, "There's no competition in the spiritual realm. What's mine finds me effortlessly and without resistance," they stay steady. Esther in the palace faced voices of delay too. A death decree hung over her people, and defeat seemed certain. But she dared to silence the noise of fear, and chose to believe there was favor over her life. Her stance changed history. You need to identify today. What voices are draining your fortune? Are they internal thoughts of inadequacy or external people mocking your steps? The Bible warns, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 33. Florence recommended a simple practice: refuse to repeat words of doubt. Replace them instantly with affirmations of abundance. This applies to conversations with others too. If someone dumps pessimism on you, don't echo it. Just declare the truth of divine prosperity within yourself. Now, reflect. What voices do you need to silence today? And more, are you surrounded by people who push you forward or pull you back? If this chapter is already helping you tune into the right voices, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You'll keep getting content to strengthen your faith and clear the path to your prosperity. I end the comments, right? I won't give power to the voices of delay. That phrase is your declaration of freedom. Remember, wealth isn't just about money, it's about guarding your mind and your circle of influence. Because a fortune drained in the mind never reaches the wallet. Chapter 9, Job restored, wealth doubled after the storm. When it comes to wealth and trials, few names are as iconic as Job. An upright man, blessed in every way, he watched everything crumble in no time. His wealth, family, health, and even his dignity, as friends turned to accusers. To human eyes, it was the end. But the story doesn't stop there. Job's restoration proves that storms don't destroy the chosen, they reveal who truly trusts. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "The game of life is a boomerang game. What you send out with your mind and words comes back multiplied." Job, even in his pain, didn't curse God. He wept, questioned, and mourned, but never abandoned his faith. That stance opened the door to restoration. The book of Job ends with, "The Lord restored Job's fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before." Job 42 verse 10. Now think, how many of us give up too soon in a crisis? It's like accepting defeat as the final verdict, missing that the next chapter might be the comeback. Florence called this the appearance of evil, something that seems permanent but is just a test of faith. The enemy of abundance is believing the storm is the end of the story. Job teaches us that pain can be a narrow hallway leading to a hall of prosperity. After his trial, he received double the sheep, oxen, camels, a restored family, and a long, prosperous life. It wasn't just recovery, it was proof that God doesn't allow permanent losses for those who stay faithful. Here's a challenge. Are you quitting just as your restoration is on the way? Florence taught that victory only comes to those who keep their words aligned, even when all seems lost. She said, "Through your words, you connect to the invisible that shapes the visible." When your mouth speaks trust amid chaos, you position yourself for double in business or everyday life. How many entrepreneurs failed before building empires? How many artists were rejected dozens of times before becoming icons? The difference lies in not turning a moment of scarcity into a permanent identity. The Bible and Florence agree. Scarcity is temporary, but the promise is eternal. Maybe you're in a job chapter today, surrounded by loss, criticism, and doubt. But don't forget, Job's story isn't about endless suffering, it's about double restoration. God didn't just give back, He multiplied. So I ask, isn't it time to stop seeing yourself as a victim of the storm and start seeing yourself as a candidate for restoration? If this hits home, write in the comments, I received double restoration. That's your faith declaration, your spiritual password to align with the next chapter of your life. And if you want to keep walking this path with Florence and the Bible's truths about prosperity, subscribe to the channel now. That simple act could be the first step toward your own restoration. Remember, wealth isn't just what you accumulate, it's what you choose to believe after the storm. The winds pass, but the promise endures. Chapter 10. Free Mind, Prosperous Pocket. The victory of throwing poverty in the trash. Poverty doesn't start in your wallet, it starts in your head. As long as your mind is chained to limiting beliefs, all your effort is just spinning in circles. It's like trying to fill a leaky bucket. No matter how much water you pour in, it all slips away. The difference between those who thrive and those who only dream lies in one radical choice: to throw out the mindset of misery. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "You can change your conditions by changing your words." Sounds too simple, doesn't it? But isn't that exactly what the Bible shows time and again? Paul wrote, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind," Romans 12 verse 2. Without that renewal, no wealth will stick. Look at Israel leaving Egypt. They were physically free, but their minds were still enslaved. They grumbled, longed to go back, and couldn't believe in the promised land. The result? An entire generation died in the desert, even with the promise right in front of them. Egypt was gone from their feet, but still lived in their heads. That's what happens to thousands today. They work hard, maybe even make some money, but never break through because they haven't ditched the scarcity mindset. Florence called this the mental pattern of failure. Those who carry this programming live as if poverty were a hereditary curse. But when you swap that inner image for visions of abundance, something shifts. It's not magic, it's spiritual law. Plant thoughts of abundance, and you'll inevitably reap prosperous fruit. Here's where many stumble. They want the blessing but keep their minds cluttered with excuses. Money's not for me, wealth is for the few, God loves the poor more than the rich. All lies, spun by those who want to keep the masses controlled. The Bible is clear. Isaac prospered in a barren land, Joseph ruled in Egypt, Esther found favor in the palace, Solomon received wisdom and riches without asking. Prosperity is God's gift, not a privilege for a select few. Now, reflect with me. What are you still holding in your mind that needs to go? What thoughts are you clinging to that act like invisible chains? Florence teaches that true victory begins when you dare to replace every defeatist phrase with a declaration of abundance. When you say, "I am prosperous because my God owns the silver and the gold," you flip a spiritual switch that changes not just today but your entire future. You might say, "But I've tried everything and nothing worked." Well, Job felt that too, yet he was restored double. Gideon saw himself as small, but he freed his nation. Ruth had nothing, yet she became part of the Messiah's lineage. It's not about what you have today but what you choose to believe moving forward. So, here's my challenge. Are you ready to take every thought of misery, wrap it up tight, and toss it into the trash bin of your story? Because only then can true wealth take up space in your life. Free mind, prosperous pocket. If this message speaks to you, write in the comments, "I throw poverty away and receive abundance." That's more than a comment, it's an act of faith. And if you want to keep diving into these secrets with Florence and biblical wisdom, subscribe to the channel now. Each video is a key to renewing your mind and opening doors the world swore were locked. Poverty is trash you don't need to carry. Decide today to dump what no longer serves you into the bin of the past, and make room for the prosperous inheritance God has already prepared for you. Florence Scovel Shinn's journey reminds us that true wealth isn't a fluke or a privilege for the few. It's a choice of faith, a daily practice of aligning thoughts, words, and actions with the abundance already waiting in the invisible. Poverty only lingers where it's tolerated. The gold of life shows up when you decide to clear your mind, declare prosperity, and step toward divine promises. Free mind, prosperous pocket. The rest is just a result. If you've made it this far, drop a like and subscribe to the channel to join us for more uplifting content on Florence's teachings for your abundance and prosperity. Until the next video.